Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I have something very fun to do. I may have bought myself some new goodies, so let's just have a look at them. So the first thing I bought was this awesome clay press. Now I'm just gonna unbox it for a second. And here it is. Now this is to be used with polymer clay, and you basically use it to roll out your clay. And I'm gonna be sculpting today. It's got this clamp here which you can use to clamp to your desk, and then you basically just like it's not put together, but you get the point. Next, I actually got some new sculpting tools. Now, usually I just prefer to sculpt with my hands. However, I seen these and I really wanted them, so I bought them, as well as some more clay. This is the FIMO or FIMO, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, branded polymer clay, and I love this stuff so much. It's really fun to work with. And I also bought this from Kmart for like really cheap. It's just a little turntable thing. I think it's meant for like pantry organizing, but to be honest, I thought I could put my clay project on here and be able to turn it around instead of having to like hold it all the time and like get my fingerprints all over it. So yeah, that's pretty neat. So I'm hoping this will make my videos, my sculpting videos, better. And we also got some aluminium foil because with this project I'm probably going to be using a lot of foil. So with that out of the way, let's just get right into it and let's see what I'm going to be sculpting today. So I started off using some tin foil or aluminium foil to make a sort of base for what I'm going to work off of. Because I'm creating a Cubone skull today, I want to sort of use two different balls of tin foil, and I'm just going to sort of wrap them around pretty solidly so that it will be able to support the clay that I'm going to be putting on top of it. I had to sort of mold it around and like push it into the sort of rough shape that I wanted to have, and I'm trying to work a little bit smaller than what I'm actually going to want this skull to be, because if I make the tin foil the exact size that I want the skull to be, the skull's going to end up being way too big. Now on to using this clay press here that I recently got, and oh my goodness, this thing is so satisfying to use. I love this thing so much. In the past I've had to just sort of knead the clay and break it up into little pieces with my hand and like roll it out with a rolling pin and that kind of thing, and that just takes way too long. But my goodness, this clay roller is so fun to use and it's really efficient. Seriously, this was a complete time saver. This clay roller thing that I got was actually $30, and honestly it's worth double. Like, this thing is just amazing to use. I knew that pasta rollers or clay rollers were very common to use in like polymer clay creating, but I didn't realize how amazing it was and how awesome it was. So I'm stoked that I got that, to be honest. So as you can see, I'm rolling out some large flat sheets of polymer clay, and I'm doing really thin sheets just to start off, and this is because I want to cover up the whole thing in a nice layer of polymer clay, but I don't want any sort of weak spots, so I'm doing lots of different layers and I'm sort of overlaying each part so that each part has a nice sort of even coverage over the tin foil. And I'm sort of trying to make sure that each part is even. I know some parts will be thicker than other parts in skulls because that's pretty normal, mainly around the eyes and the back of the head, and towards the nose it will be a little bit thinner, and I'm trying to sort of concentrate on that a little bit while also making sure that I'm building up in the right shapes that I want. Now I do want some thicker parts of clay down the bottom towards the back of the skull, and this is because Cubone has these sort of ridges on his skull where it sort of comes off a bit, and I'm trying to make sure that the skull itself is also symmetrical because this is a very slightly simple design, and if something is not symmetrical you are going to notice it straight away, so I wanted to make sure that it was, you know, symmetrical. So now that I've got my rough shape down, there are a few little bumps and parts here where you can see where the clay is connected, but I'm not worrying about that yet. I'm just going in with my new clay tools and also my X-Acto knife to draw in and cut out the eye holes and the nose holes. And this is where I realized how thick the clay really was, because you don't really notice when you're building up really thin layers of clay. It does end up building up quite a bit, but to be honest I'm not mad because it did make it look nice and solid, and this skull has a lot of nice weight to it, so I'm really glad about that. So now after I cut out those shapes, I just tried to make sure that they were really symmetrical and similar to each other, and it just sort of looked a lot like a Cubone skull. After that, I was just sort of rearranging things here and there, trying to keep to my reference as well as I could, and I'm quite happy with how it's turning out at the moment. After I got more details down which I wanted to get, I went in with some of my more flat sculpting tools and also a little bit of rubbing alcohol, which I bought in a little spray bottle, and I'm just going over the whole thing and smoothing it out. Now a lot of people have told me that using rubbing alcohol is a great way to smooth out the clay so that you can get rid of your fingerprints and just any sort of imperfections here and there, and that combined with the little flat sort of curved sculpting tool, I'm not sure what it's actually called, I don't know the terminology of these things, but those two together were very helpful for me to sort of smooth out areas and get rid of bumps and nicks and stuff like that, as well as the parts where the clay sort of connected to each other, because I used lots of different sheets for this. That was really useful for doing that, and it just sort of made the whole thing look more like one solid piece, which I was very happy with. After this, it was time to add the details which are really going to make it look more like a Cubone skull. It's those horns on the top of its head. They are sort of iconic, and you can't have a Cubone skull without those. So I basically just rolled out some rough sausage shapes, and then I added a bit of thickness to the bottom so it was more of a triangle shape, and then with a little bit of like mixing here and there, trying to get the shapes and the size right, I added them onto the skull behind the eyes, sort of near where those ridges connect to the skull, and yeah, it's turning out really well, and I'm very happy with the results. After this, it was time to add another little detail which I definitely did not want to miss. It was those little sort of teeth that are at the bottom of the skull. They're sort of where the snout meets the cranium of the skull, and they have these little round teeth that sort of jut out from the bottom. Now I was a little bit worried about this because they could have, you know, gotten flattened by the parts of the part that the skull is sitting down on the platform, but to prevent that, I just scrunched up a little bit more of tin foil and I sat the skull on top of that so that the teeth were sort of off the surface and sort of hanging there. And yeah, they turned out really well. After that, I went in with my sort of sculpting tools with a really sharp one, and I scratched in some sort of little cracks Now, Cubone has these cracks which go from its eyes and its nose to the bottom of the skull, and I definitely wanted to include those because I had a really cool idea for what I wanted to do with them. After this, I baked it for 110 degrees Celsius for about 25 minutes, and now is the time to scoop out the innards of the skull. Doesn't that sound cool? But seriously, I had to sort of cut out and scrape out all of that tin foil which I had created in the first place, because now that this skull is fired and it's hardened, we don't need those inner parts to support it. And once I did that, I was sort of amazed. It turned out more like a skull than I expected, and it just looks so damn awesome. I'm not trying to like pull my own leg here or anything, but it's pretty cool and I'm really happy with it. After this, I did a quick sanding over the whole thing with just some 100 grit sandpaper. Now this was just to sort of smooth out any edges, as well as sort of soften the parts where the polymer clay met the tin foil. I wanted to sort of smoothen those out so that it looked more neat, and yeah, I'm actually really happy with it. Now was the time to paint the skull, and the paint job is pretty simple because, well, bones are white and this polymer clay is white here, but what I actually did was I pushed in some sort of warm grayish colors down into the cracks that I had made on the skull, and after this I sort of wiped it away with a bit of damp paper towel. Now this was just so I could get some paint down in those cracks and sort of emphasize them a little bit, and that just sort of makes them stand out really nicely, and it just gives a nice little bit of detail that really makes it work. After this, I went in with just some little subtle shadows here and there, just to sort of make the skull look a little bit more gritty and a little bit more natural, because this skull isn't like fresh and clean. It's one that a little baby Cubone has been wearing on its head while it's been Pokemon battling. So yeah. After I did all of that and got that done nicely how I wanted it to, it was complete. So here it is, ladies and gentlemen, and to be honest, I'm really surprised with how it actually turned out. I really love the cracks in here and how I put like dark paint in there to like make it more emphasized, and I don't know, the overall thing just looks so cool and I love it so much. You know, this gets me thinking, if I could make a skull like this, I wonder what would happen if I tried to sculpt a dragon skull. Let me know below if you reckon I should try to sculpt a dragon skull. I think that would be really cool. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I had so much fun making it and I just love the results so much. Please let me know below what you think, and also hit like and subscribe to get your scribble fix in the future, and I will see you in my next video. Bye everyone.